Hello! Today I am going to go over Inkscape. We're going to tour the interface and preferences and how to navigate around these patterns. Let's go ahead and get started. I've just opened up Inkscape. I have not opened up any patterns, and I just want to go over a few things. On the left hand side, these are all the tools. You can customize which tools appear here. Also, if you're watching some videos that it might look different, then you know that these are the tools and they can be customized. Up here at the top is our menu bar, and it's very similar to other programs with File, Edit, View, and then it has some of the options that are only available in programs such as Inkscape. Just under that, we have what is called our tool control bar, and that changes according to what tool is selected, and it changes different controls for that specific tool. So you can see when I clicked on different tools, the tool control bar changed as well. Next, right underneath that, we have rulers. Those are going to be very useful when you are measuring things or lining them up. So those are your rulers. We also have the gray part on mine is called the canvas, and the white part here is the page. You can change the appearance of how this looks as well in preferences, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's continue our tour around right here where it says layer 1. This is called the docking area. And this is where you can often view your layers and a few other of the tools that you're going to dock here, such as strokes and items like that. Next is right here on the right hand side, which is our commands bar. Now on some Inkscapes you might have an additional bar, which would be the snaps control bar. Mine is just listed up here where I can enable or disable snapping. I'm going to turn it off for now and click on that little arrow to enable or disable snapping. And I'm just going to turn it off for now. Down here at the bottom where we have our X, Y, we have a Z and an R. This is our status bar. And also on the status bar, you're going to see what layer is selected, if it's viewed, if it's locked, some information, our fill and stroke color. So lots of information going here. Just above it is your palette. So you can click on those to change the color of lines just right from there. All right, next we're going to go down to File and Document Properties. And I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger just so you can see it out here right in the center. Okay, on your document properties, this is where you can kind of change some of your defaults. And if yours looks slightly different than mine, it's okay. I changed mine to inches because I work in inches. You can also change the default page size if you like. If you're normally going to be opening up patterns, you don't really need to change the page size because you're going to be opening up a pattern. Or you can make a default layer such as the A0 size or whatever you want, really. Don't change the scale. Make sure you leave it there. And display units, I like to change my display units to inches. I do keep the page, I do keep a border, and I like my desktop to be a different color. But you can click on those and you can change the appearance of your canvas and your page. You can make it so you change the border, or you can even make sure that it doesn't show the border. So I can unclick the border and there's no longer a page border. Let me move this over just a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Right now it has that black line around it, and then if I uncheck it, there's no border there at all. So I'm going to go ahead and click that on there. You can also show labels. I don't really use that a lot. Another one you might want to look at a lot is guides. I like to use guides. I stick with the default guide colors, just the blue and the red. Grids, you can create different grids. The rectangle grid is probably the only one that you're going to use, but I went ahead and turned that on so you can see that that's how that grid looks. Okay, and right now I have it enabled and I have it visible. You can leave that on. It's a great way to just check your calibration, and it's just kind of in the background, but you can also remove it if you would prefer it not to be on there. I could just push remove. But again, if you want a grid, rectangular grid, and select new, it's enabled, it's visible, and right now it's everything there. If you want to show dots instead of lines, it looks like that's even barely can see that on there. I don't even know if it's showing up on the video, but there are little dots there, and I'm going to go ahead and take those dots off. So a grid, it's really up to you. It's not going to save. If you're saving the document, it's not going to save the grid on your document. That's just for viewing purposes. I'm going to go ahead and disable that for now. I'll just remove that for now. Okay, all of these others don't really need to worry about right now. I don't change anything on here. We're not going to be, I just leave it proprietary. But there you go, that's the document properties and how we can kind of set that up. I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. It should all be saved. And you could see that I have inches on here now. My units are inches here as well. And I have an A0 sized page. You can also pull grids down if you click in the arrows. And we have a horizontal grid on the left, and I can bring another one. It's red when it's selected and blue when it's not. And I'll be going over those a lot later as well. Let's go ahead and look at some of the important preferences, how you can change the layout and the look of things on the screen. The first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is go to Preferences. We're going to go to Edit and down to Preferences. And once we're in Preferences, we're actually going to look at Interface. And if you click on Interface, you're going to see this Zoom Correction Factor. I'm going to come back to this when we talk about calibrating and Inkscape. I'm not going to go over this right now, but keep that in mind that we are going to be using that. And let's go down to where it says Theme. You can switch to the dark theme. See, it changes everything dark if you prefer to have that look. And maybe if you're working with your projector, you like that dark look a little bit better. Or you can uncheck it to go back to the light theme. You're welcome to play with some of the colors. You can change it however you would like. Let's go to Toolbars. We can actually change the toolbars on the left and how it appears. If you go down to the toolbar icon size, if your icons are too small and you're like, I cannot see that, I need them bigger, you can go ahead and make them bigger. Okay, so play with that slider and get on the size that you like. The other thing we can do is, we don't need all these tools for patterns, so you really can take a lot of them off that you don't need, especially like the gradients. If I just click on them, it takes them off. Okay, if you're not sure what it is, you just hover over it, okay, and it will show you. That's diagram connectors. I probably won't need that. Really, the only ones you need are the selector tool, the node tool, the pen tool, that one, yep, the pen tool, and measure and zoom are probably the most ones that I use if you want to just get it down to the minimal, as long as you don't forget where some of these other tools are. You might want the text tool because you're probably going to label things. Calligraphy tool we don't need. Pencil tool we don't need. You do want the pen tool. You could probably take off some of the shapes unless you're doing lots of pattern drafting or something like that you want to draw shapes. You can take those shapes off. We don't really need those. If you like, I mean, this is totally up to you on your preferences. We don't really need the shape builder tool. If you want to just bring it down to some of the very, very basics, you absolutely can. You can also change the size of the control bar. That's the top. It's the top here. Remember, that's the control bar icon size. Okay, I'm just going to keep it in line with my other tools. And this is under Preferences, Interface, Toolbars. The theming in the toolbars is probably the most thing you're going to use. We've already talked about grids and document properties. So you don't really need to change anything else in here. You can leave it as all the defaults. And to save it, there's not really a save. You just close out. All right, next, I want to come over to the View button And we do have a zoom, and let me get back to this. We can zoom in, we can zoom out. I'm going to show you faster ways to do that as well. This zoom 1-to-1, once you get that set up with calibration, which I'm going to go over in the next video and talk about that zoom 1-to-1, you can use that shortcut 1 to quickly get back to your zoom calibration. The orientation, I usually lock the orientation for now. Display mode. Now, this is really cool, this enhance thin lines. If you click on that on a pattern that the pattern lines are really thin, it will quickly just display them thicker, okay? And this one says at least 1 pixel wide. So try that out if you have some thin lines. So it's a really quick way to do that. And then split mode, we really don't use that a lot in Inkscape, but if you see your screen is half one way and half another way, just come and turn that off. And we want that as none. Alright, I do like my guides on, and so I usually just keep that checked, because I do like those guides. Again, to get those guides, you just click on the ruler and you can bring it down wherever you would like that guide to be. Let's go back to view again, and see, I can turn that off. And then I can turn them back on really quick. If you want to have them a reference point, but not on all the time, you can definitely use that. Now this show hide right here, this is a great way to customize the way that your screen looks in the work mode. When I'm making edits to a pattern, I really like to have all of these available, but you can come and you can turn them off. If you don't want to see one of these, you can come and just say, I don't want the snap controls, I don't want to worry about it, I don't want the palette down at the bottom, and you can really start clearing up your screen if you would like. Most of the time in this view mode, when I'm working and I'm editing a pattern, I kind of like to have most of these. Probably the biggest one I don't use a lot is the commands bar on the far right. Sometimes the snap, but those are so small I don't really worry about that. But know you can come and change what your screen looks like, or if you are missing something, come back here and make sure everything is checked. We can also customize our full screen mode, which is down here. It's the shortcut is F11, or you come down where it says full screen and just click on that. And when you're full screen, it kind of gets rid of the clutter for you. And right now I have tools, you may or may not have tools, and my layers panel is over here. But if you click on those 3 dots, you can get those away, and this way you can get to view your entire pattern a little bit easier. You can also come down to view again to that show hide in full screen mode and say, I don't need the tools in full screen mode, I'm just projecting a pattern and I want to get rid of those. I can go ahead and get rid of those. Now a quick way to navigate on this screen is if you have a mouse with a mouse wheel, that will scroll your up and down. Okay. If you click on the mouse wheel and hold it, that will be like a grabbing hand and you can move your pattern around. In fact, let me go ahead and exit full screen. You just come here and click on it again. And I'm going to draw some squares on there for you just so you can see that it's moving around. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's go back to full screen. Okay, you can see my layers are still here. Now, since I had the tool, the shape tool, when I was on there, it's currently on the shape tool. If I don't want that and I want the select tool, again, I can go back to the toolbox. I can just show hide, or I can push F11 and go back to the desktop view. And now I can show hide. I can take that off again if you would like. If you are doing editing as you go, then you might want to keep the tools on. But now I can click the mouse wheel and navigate around. I can scroll up and down. So this is a great way to go all around your pattern. You can also use the arrow keys, but you'll notice if you just use the arrow keys by themselves, I was trying to click it, nothing happens. You do have to push the control or the command, and then you can use the arrow keys to move it up or down. Okay? And so this is how you can navigate around in full screen mode and change your views. So again, you get out of full screen mode. It is F11. Go ahead and I'm going to click that. We're going to get out of full screen mode. Your layers often, if they're still collapsed, you can just bring them out if you would like to have them out again. And each of those layers should be there. We're going to go ahead and open up a pattern and talk a little bit more about the layers menu. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about, I went ahead and opened up a pattern that does have layers on here. And you can see that we do have the layers panel, and you can click on layers and objects. Mine is already opened in my dock over here on the right, but if you didn't see it, you could go to layer, layers, and objects. I'm just going to do a brief overview of the layers and how they work in Inkscape. So I pulled up a pattern, and when you come over to it, you'll see a little dark box, an eye, and a lock. So currently this layer is not visible. I can turn it on or off. Let's see. Let's get one down here. There, you can see that small layer here. Let's go to the smallest layer. See, it turns on and off. When I click that eye, you can also lock the layer so that you don't make changes to it. If you are grading and you don't want any changes to be made to the original layer, you can lock it. You can also change the opacity of it. I'm going to show you they have a calibration layer here. Let me turn that on and off so you can see which one I'm talking about. So that's the calibration layer that they have on this pattern. You can come down here if you want to leave it on, but you just want to have it kind of more in the background, but you want to leave it on, you can do that, or bring it back up. And again, if you want to lock the layer, you can click the lock next to it or click unlock. And those are the basics of the layers. If you want to see all the objects in the layer, you can click the arrow next to it. And you can also, delete layers as you need just by clicking the X there. You can also right click on it and you can duplicate that layer. This is a great one if you are grading between two layers. You can pick one size and then make adjustments to it. You can delete it. You can rename it. You can add layers. You can move it up and down. For patterns, that doesn't usually make a difference, but you can play with that. You can lock or unlock all the other layers. Okay, so now you can see in one click, I locked all the other layers. Or I can right click again and I can come down to unlock all the other layers and just lock this layer. Those are just if you're making lots of changes. The biggest thing you're probably going to be using is turning the eye so you can view it on or off when you are sewing. I can also quickly hide all the layers and then just unhide the size that I want. So you see how I did that? Because this is really useful when you are sewing. It's quite a shortcut. Again, just click on a layer, come down to either hide all layers or show all layers. So I'm going to show all layers right now. And now I can come to hide all the layers. But I want to leave that one on, and I probably want the text and the markers on. I have just the 5T. So if you want to quickly hide all the layers, again, you can just go over there and click hide or show all other layers. So this one, I've hid all the other layers except for the layer, and that's quick instead of going through one by one and clicking on it, which can take a long time if you're going one by one to click on it. So that can take a long time. So again, the shortcut, you just right click and you can go to show or hide other layers, and now it's hid all those other layers except for the size that I wanted. You can also do that under the layers panels. If you don't want to right click on that layer, you can come to layer and you can go show or hide current layer or lock unlock current layer. So these are a few of the different things that you can do with your layers panel. Okay, now that we've talked about that layers panel a little bit, just a tiny overview, and I'll come back to that more in depth in some of the other tutorials. I'm not going to be going over objects and grouping and ungrouping or any of that editing today, but that would be under the objects. There are also shortcuts in the select tool for some of those. Path, we're not going to be talking about those today. Text, filters, we're not really using those in sewing. Extensions, again, you're not going to really use that a whole lot for sewing purposes. Help, you can definitely use the help section. They have the manual. They also have tutorials that kind of get you started. They are not geared towards sewing. They're just how to use that program. So you definitely can do that. You can also use the keys and mouse references, which is going to go over all of the shortcuts. So that will conclude kind of our tour and overview of getting started with Inkscape. Make sure to tune in when I go over zooming and calibrating in Inkscape. See you next time.